Entrepreneurship is far more a war of the heart than it is a war of the mind.
With 20 hours of focused effort, most people can be pretty decent at something, whether it's guitar, it's singing, even cold calling. But most people spend years waiting to do the first hour.
No. Entrepreneurship is far more a war of the heart than it is a war of the mind. Like, we can understand what we should do, we just don't do it. And I think that's why we're so much better at giving advice than we are at following it. The biggest entrepreneurial mistakes I've made in my career have all come from splitting my attention. Every one of them. As soon as I did that, my revenue started slowing down in its growth. Like, when you have three things going on, any of them can work, but none of them will work unless you pick only one. And I can promise you the competitor who is going to beat you is only doing that one thing. And you think a third of your time is going to beat theirs? No. And I think by doing that, you can actually conquer this cycle and make it past the split where you go crash and burn and then restart the doom loop, or make it to informed optimism and then eventually to the achievement that you want. Any massive company that you know of has existed for multiple decades. And in order for something to exist for multiple decades, the founder has to stay focused on that thing for the whole time. And I measure focus by the quantity and quality of things that you say no to. And I measure commitment, or I define commitment as the elimination of alternatives. And so if you think of marriage as the ultimate commitment, then it is the ultimate commitment because you've eliminated literally every alternative besides this person. And so I think that many business problems and many entrepreneurs would 5x, 10x their business if they simply gave themselves no way out. This is what I'm doing. And the term, burning the boats, but I'm eliminating all alternatives and structuring my life such that I make it very difficult to pursue the alternatives. I think one of the biggest misconceptions when you're an entrepreneur is not understanding the difference between being an owner and being the CEO. And so they might hear that you have a portfolio, they might hear that I have a portfolio and be like, okay, well, they have a portfolio, so I must model that. That guy's tall, I should play basketball. Doesn't work that way, right? So if I want to be rich, I should fly private. Doesn't work that way, right? It's conflating order. And so we must do these things in order to get the outcome. We have to concentrate on only one thing in order to get the outsized return. And that spreading of attention, especially when you're newer in the entrepreneurial career, it's like you already don't know so many things. How do you now want to have three sets of unknowns that you want to try and conquer at the same time? And the fallacy of thinking is that I'm going to try all of them and see which one works, but none of them will work because you're waiting to see which one will work. There are 6 stages. You have stage 1, which is uninformed optimism. This is where you see your friend or you see something online and it looks like they're making money or it looks like there's some opportunity and you think, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And you have optimism because it looks great, but it's uninformed because you have no idea what it entails. So then you dive in and you say, okay, I'm going to pursue this thing, whatever. Is it baking cupcakes, or I'm going to do lawn mowing, or I'm going to do crypto trading, creation, whatever. Second step is you get into it and you're like, oh my God, I don't know. There's so many things involved in this, and this is significantly more complicated than I expected. So then you become an informed pessimist. You now know that it's hard, or significantly harder than you expected. The third stage is you have your crisis of meaning, or the valley of despair. So you're continuing to do this stuff, it's continuing to not work, and you keep working, and it keeps not working. And so this is the step, and this is the point of truth. And this is the cycle where the paths of the entrepreneur split. And the vast majority of people take this next step, which is they then say, you know what? There's that thing over there that my other friend's doing. Maybe I should do that instead. And so then they hop back to uninformed optimism, and then they go boom to informed pessimism, and they just go around and around and around, and they live the same 6 months for 20 straight years. Now, the other path from the valley of despair is sticking with it. And so then you become an informed optimist, because now you still understood all the bad stuff, but you also understand the good stuff and how to avoid the bad and maximize the good. And then once you're there, you stick on that path long enough and you end up achieving what you originally thought was really easy and fast. I think that the vast majority of organizations have no idea how to train, and their entire training, their way of getting talent is just, let's hire 10 and we'll just see who works out, rather than being able to take someone and level them up. And I think that the ability to train is one of the largest alphas that exist in organizations, because if you can buy talent at B skill and get them to A+, then you net the delta in profit between what you had to attract and pay the person to come and what they perform at. If you have to use a picking strategy, then you have to pay for current market rate of the skill. And so you actually eat into margin because you don't know how to train. There are advantages to speed, and sometimes it still makes sense to bring in the talent because maybe the training requires so much time that it's not worth it. And so from a hiring perspective, because I know we were just talking, this is the theme, we always want to hire for the smallest skill deficiency. And so in low skilled labor, for example, if we have a cupcake bakery, if you look at the richest people in the world, almost none of them own 100% of their business. So number one, most of them don't even own 50. Like most of them are small percentages. Jensen Huang's at 4% for NVIDIA. Bezos is at 7 or 9% for Amazon. I think Elon's at 20 for Tesla, like small percentages. And it's because it takes a lot of horses to take a chariot to the moon, right? And so basically, as you put in more intellectual horsepower, the potential peak of the business goes so much higher, so much faster. Keith Verbois he was one of the original PayPal Mafia guys, has a really good analogy for this. And he talks about it in terms of barrels and ammunition. And he says, so as soon as you get some product market fit, the business starts to grow and you say, okay, we need to start shipping things faster. And this works the same with a services business, a physical products business, software business, the concept's the same. And so what happens is you then hire a lot of people and you assume that your throughput is going to increase proportionally. So we have 10 people, we hire 50, we should 5x our output. And then you quickly realize that that is not the case. And so what happens is there are people who are rate limiters for an organization, and those are the barrels. So think about like a Civil War barrel, old cannon, and you've got these cannonballs next to it. He said most people are ammunition. And so you bring more ammunition, but you're still gonna be limited by the one barrel capacity of how many shots can get taken by the barrel. And so you need to find more barrels. So you have to go from 1 barrel to 2 barrels, 2 barrels to 3 barrels, and that becomes an increase in capacity or throughput for the organization. And there are very few of those. In a different, I can't remember the law, but it's some organizational law, but the square root of the number of people in a company generate 50% of the work. So if you have 100 people in an organization, 10 people are responsible for 50% of the value that's created.
Facts.
Right. And so the thing is I think the real game of entrepreneurship is that your standards rise over time. And it's unfortunate because we hear things that other entrepreneurs tell us, it's all about the people, stupid. And then you're like, sure, but look at and it's like, no, you're not hearing it. And I don't know, there are some, I think Williamson talks about this, how there's like some lessons that for some reason, it's like we have to learn for ourselves. I still believe that it's like we can operationalize this at a lower level so that we don't have to learn it for ourselves. But like I'm convinced, I haven't figured it out yet. But so every entrepreneur can resonate with this, which is every business that I've started, I've gotten to the success of the business prior way faster. And I kind of liken it to a video game where it's like you beat level 1 and then, you get to level 2 and it's like you spend months trying to beat this boss and you finally figure out how to beat the boss and it's like great. And then you spend another 3 months beating boss 3. And let's say you start the game over with a new character. It's like you just zoom through level 1, 2, and 3 and then you get to level 4 and you're like, shoot, now I got to spend time. It's like virgin land. Like, I don't know how to beat this yet. And so I think that happens for archetype finding for skill and talent within an organization. And so
say that again.
So if you have functions across an organization, there are people who are going to drive results within that function. And the first time you hire a salesperson, for example, you don't know what you're looking for. And so you just hire a human who says they can sell. And maybe they can, maybe they can't. And then you cycle through, you try to train them, that doesn't work, does work, whatever. And then finally, let's say you cycle through 3 sales guys and finally you find a killer. And then you have this pattern recognition, you're like, okay, that's what I'm looking for. And then all of a sudden you try and approximate that person or that archetype as much as you can. And so when you start your second company, you're like, oh, I can quick outcome. And so knowing how to staff that up is the job. So the simplest way of attracting somebody to your business when you don't know how to do the job or know who to look for is to unfortunately do the job yourself. And then once you can break down the job, we follow 3 Ds, which is document, demonstrate, duplicate. That's how we train anybody. So first, you have to document everything that you do to successfully do the job. and that's step by step into a checklist. Then you demonstrate. So you do this checklist in front of the person that you're trying to bring on. Then they duplicate, they do the checklist in front of you. What's interesting about that 3-step process is that you'll often find when you try to demonstrate following the checklist, you don't follow your checklist. And so then you have to adjust the checklist until you actually follow the checklist. And then when you can consistently follow that checklist and get the output, then you can have them do that checklist. And so I think this is why bootstrap founders, I think oftentimes will find they tend to know more about more things because they had to learn them in order to teach them. Now, what's really interesting about what you said about accidentally finding that star at 3 or 4 years in is that I think that happens to almost everyone. Well, hopefully the people who end up making it happens to almost everyone. Because then you realize, oh my God, like if I had 4 of these people, like we could change the world. So it was one of the first people that you're like, oh my God, I hired that person, it changed everything. So my CFO in Gym Launch had taken 4 companies from 0 to 100 million. She had done over 40 M&A transactions. Her largest one was 5 billion, super experienced. She was at the very end of her career. And she was like, I'll take you guys, I'll take this one last ride with you guys. And so, mind you, Layla and I'm 26 or 27 at the time. Layla's 23. Sometimes the jumping ship to start this thing is the lesson that you need to immediately unlearn, because after that, you have to just stick with it for a very long period of time.
Is this the business I'm going to start? With 20 hours of focused effort, most people can be pretty decent at something, whether it's guitar, it's singing, even cold calling. If you actually cold called for 20 hours, focused effort, you'd be decent. But most people spend years waiting to do the first hour. And so I like thinking about things in terms of directionally correct rather than will I hit it or not? It's because it's easy psychologically for us to say yes, no, honest, dishonest, etc. But it makes making decisions really hard. Because you're like, is this the path for me? Whereas well, if I started something successful in the future than you are today, just embrace the suck. And so it's like, how can I normalize no's? So it's like, if I'm teaching somebody to sell, it's like, dude, I need you to get 100 no's. And the thing is all of a sudden, if the no becomes the goal, then they realize that it's about the process and not the outcome. And then they will become better salespeople because they stop being afraid of it. The same thing, like for training a salesperson, I want them to hear the gasp, right? Which is like you say a one, right? So you have to say no to all the other mistresses. So boom is 100 primary actions, whether that's 100 minutes of content creation per day, 100 reach outs per day, $100 of ad spend per day. You have to pick one of them, but 100 per day, and you do that for 100 days, and I promise you'll be making 6 figures. Also, I feel like 2 parts of the audience that follow my stuff. I've got the business owners who are trying to scale their business, et cetera, and then I've got all the people who want to start a business, and usually they're a little bit younger and whatnot. And I think there's a misnomer around education. And so a lot of them, I don't know how explicit I can be, but they mentally masturbate to watching lots and lots of videos. They, want the pump up speeches, they buy the tickets to the things. Mm-hmm. And I think that they think that exposure to information is learning. And I don't think that's true, or at least it hasn't been for me.
That's definitely not true.
And so when I do the original rule of 100 and whatnot, it's because I think it's the most effective way to learn, which is you force yourself on the one controllable that you have, which is the activities that you can take. And then it goes with the underlying assumption that you go off feedback and you're like, well, that opening message did not work, right? And then I think most people have a dramatic underestimation of how much volume it takes to be successful. You get the skill from the volume, the feedback from the volume. And there's all these little things. I'm sure it's from the exercise world because you come from that. When you squat, the first time you squat, you're orienting yourself to your environment. You're barely actually squatting. You're just looking like you have a bar on your back. But you learn so much between that first rep and your 10,000th rep of squats. And so I think for most people, it's if I can just decrease the action threshold for people to begin and be okay with the fact that they're going to suck, and it is okay to suck. You should expect to suck. And it would be unreasonable for you to be good if you haven't done it before. There's 3 traits that people then they looked at, because they were trying to find habits of highly successful people. And when they actually pulled apart, it's not, and I hope I'm not contradicting anything, but there's people who are really rich who wake up really late and work really late. And there's people really rich who wake up really, really early. And there's people who are really rich who eat really healthy. And there's people really rich who drink Coca-Cola and eat French fries every day. And so there's all these things that we want to make as truths, but there's easy examples that counter those things. So it's what are the few things that are true, or at least that seem to be present in all of the situations? And it seems as though there were surprisingly few. And so the 3 common traits that they had found were, 1, that people have superiority complex. They believe they're better than others, and they believe that they deserve more than everyone else does, and that they can accomplish big goals, right? So they have a bigger vision because they believe they deserve it, or whatever it is, that they were able to identify that. The second thing that they would identify is that they had crippling insecurity, and which is a paradox of paradoxes. They feel they'll never be enough, and they'll always be measured against the things that they've achieved. And so you've got this crazy dynamic between they think they're better than everyone, they think they deserve more, they want to go after this big hill, and at the same time, they fear they'll never be good enough, they'll never actually achieve it, and they actually suck. And then the third piece, which kind of adds the beautiful mix of this, is impulse control. And so they're able to control their actions and focus on a single thing for an extended period of time. And so if you put those three things together, it's like you've got a big goal that's pulling you this way, you've got this big fear that you are running away from, and then you've got impulse control to keep you focused on the one thing that matters. And if you do that, if you are the type of person who has those traits, then you are very likely to be successful. If you can wait a year, you can make a ton of money. If you can do something for 12 months, you cannot need for financial goodness pretty much for the rest of your life. I'm not saying you're gonna be hella rich, but you're not gonna need for anything if you can wait 12 months. If you can wait a decade, you're going to be above the 1%. If you can wait 10 years for an outcome, be able to do the doing without seeing the result, you will be able to be above most achievement of most people. And if you can wait a lifetime and you don't even need to see the result of your doing this, even while you are alive, but know that it may get done after you pass, then I believe that you can change the world. And I mean that. And so I think that if people can just extend the time horizon that they're measuring themselves on, they can just do so much more. I mean, you've probably heard the Bill Gates quote where he says, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. I think it's the same thing, just continue to draw it out. And I think as we've been able to achieve more leverage and make more money, et cetera, my horizon has extended. And when I listen to the people who I want to emulate, I can almost tell by the measurement of money that they talk about and the measurement of time that they discuss how successful they are or how successful I think they're going to be. If I talk to a 25-year-old and he's talking about what he wants to do in 2 decades and his whole plan of what he's going to do, as long as he's not just blowing smoke because he's heard an interview from me, then I'm like, this kid's got it. He gets it. He gets it. And most people just don't think they can't wait 90 days. Most people can't even wait a month, right? They start a diet and 14 days later they don't have a six-pack and they can't wait. But if you do a year, you can look whatever way you want, for the most part, by and large. And if you wait a year for the ability to learn how to sell, you wait a year for the ability to learn how to market,